Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to the witnesses, and I would like to just express and associate myself with the remarks of Mr. Vigneault in saying that the interference that we see and the threat posed by the Beijing Communist Party has nothing to do with Chinese Canadians who are victims of the regime and their interference activities. It's very important we keep that in mind at all times during this our deliberations on this matter. Mr. Vigneault, how many times did CSIS brief the Prime Minister regarding Beijing's interference in the 2019 and 2021 elections?
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I have been director of CSIS since 2017. I have had many opportunities to brief the Prime Minister, Cabinet, and different ministers on the subject of national security, including specifically on foreign interference. I would not have a specific breakdown of the number of times since 2017, but this has been a topic of ongoing briefings.
Will you undertake then to provide the committee with a list of all the dates that you briefed the Prime Minister, that CSIS briefed the Prime Minister in regards to interference activities by Beijing related to the 2019 and 2021 elections?
So, Madam Chair, I understand that yesterday the National Security Intelligence Advisor was asked for a similar request, and my reaction to this would be to probably work with the Privy Council Office to have a consolidated response to the committee through you, Madam Chair.
And will you also undertake to do the same with respect to a list of all the dates that CSIS briefed any minister, PMO staff, minister's office staff, or security-cleared Liberal Party staff related to Beijing's interference in the 2019 and 2021 elections?
So, Madam Chair, I think, as just mentioned, we will endeavor to collide as much of that information possible, and bearing any specific national security considerations, we will endeavor to provide as much as possible to the committee.
Okay, and I guess consistent with that, or in addition to that, will you undertake to provide a list of all individuals who are present at these briefings to the degree that this is possible?
I will probably have to defer to the extent to which we know. We will again, provide the information in the context of bearing any other national security considerations, but we'll probably have to rely also on the Privy Council Office for some of the attendance of these briefings. So that consolidated piece will hopefully be answering many of these questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. On February 24th, 2023, Sam Cooper of Global News reported that 3 weeks before the 2019 election, CSIS officials gave an urgent briefing to senior aides in the Prime Minister's office, warning them that a Liberal candidate who is a sitting Liberal MP now had received assistance from Beijing's Toronto consulate in his nomination campaign. What are the names of the PMO aides who were briefed?
Madam Chair, as I just indicated, we'll have to review the list of and the dates of such briefings. It will be important to remind colleagues that I will, or this committee, I should say, that I do not take the premise of that the question at face value. I need to be able to provide information respecting the proper classification of the information. So that the spirit of that question will be answered through the consolidated response. And to that end, did CSIS brief the Prime Minister? CSIS, as I mentioned.
No, but specifically in relation to the 2019 circumstances surrounding a Liberal candidate and Beijing's consulate in Toronto assisting him in his nomination campaign. So
maybe, Madam Chair, on that question, I think it's important to put in context that information that is in the public domain may or may not be coming from the service or from other agencies. There's been indeed information that is now reported by the media It is not because the information is in the media that I'm at liberty to confirm or deny the specific nature of classified information. So along these lines, I will not be able to provide a specific answer to
I
that
understand that
allegation.
you're not able to provide a specific answer at this time, but again, would you undertake to go back and provide this committee with any date or dates that the Prime Minister was briefed on this matter?
I will be able to provide, Madam Chair, a consolidated response to PCO of dates where the subject of foreign interference was discussed. However, I am not at liberty to disclose information directly or indirectly that would provide classified information in a public setting. So there will be limit, Madam Chair, to the specificity of the topic discussed. But as I said, I think it's important that people understand that foreign interference was indeed briefed regularly.
Okay, and the same would apply with respect to Liberal Party staff or other officials who may have been briefed. If you could also undertake that, if they were briefed, to come back to this committee, having regard for what you had previously said, unless it doesn't apply in that case.
We will, I think, in the spirit of these hearings, Madam Chair, we will absolutely endeavor to provide the most consolidated and thorough response possible to the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of the witnesses for being here. You just mentioned that it's a hypothetical situation where there are leaks, but in fact we had a leak apparently to global, and this has serious consequences. But is it perhaps because that the people who had that information were dissatisfied with how the information was handled by CSIS or the government? And does it say something about the tensions that might exist? Madam Chair, I would say that in an intelligence agency like ours, there are always different points of view and very serious discussions. But I want to assure the committee that issues dealing directly with interference constitute a very important issue, and we discuss them very seriously with all of our people, so there's no problem there. There are measures in CSIS for people who are dissatisfied with how information is being handled to take use a process to deal with that. We have in CIRA as well a complaint process to deal with classified information. So there are processes and forums for people to explore these concerns. It's not an issue that there is this kind of tension within CSIS. Thank you. I want to come back to the issue of donations to the Trudeau Foundation. We know that when the Chinese government is making donations, it's because it is political interference. How do you deal with this, and do they come to CSIS directly, these kind of complaints? This is an important question, and it's a complex matter with respect to the foundation in question. I believe it operates at arm's length from the government, so it is not something that CSIS would get involved with directly. That said, if we are aware of information involving a foreign actor that is undertaking disruption activities or interference, then we can take action. On the specific question, CSIS doesn't necessarily have the last word because depending on the situation, there may be other agencies, organizations involved. But in my experience, CSIS is involved in the discussions. Thank you. You mentioned in your opening remarks that when it is appropriate, one of the roles of CSIS is to counter threats. What happens in those situations, and who else has a role to play in deciding whether those steps are taken? Madam Chair, the powers that CSIS has for countering threats go back to 1998, I believe. The changes were made then, and it's always evolving how we use those powers. As I mentioned earlier, generally, we don't work alone. We work with our partners to understand clearly the context of the situation and the impacts to ensure that we take the most specific action possible to deal with the threat. So we would not usually take action without consulting our agency, but before taking action. We heard that from our previous witnesses, that is Elections Canada and the Commissioner's Office, that they are not able to take specific action. So I would like to hear from you, since the Prime Minister seemed to brush aside the recommendation that more needed to be done. So is there enough power available to deal with these situations for CSIS? I mentioned in my opening remarks, Madam Chair, that foreign interference is taken seriously, and over the past few years we have noted that the types and sophistication of foreign interference have evolved, have increased. They have learned how we work and the types of powers that we have and what we can do. And that is why we need to protect certain parts of our information. CSIS, the CSE, the RCMP, and the Commissioner's Office all have complementary powers. And do we need more tools in our toolbox? That's certainly something that we can look at. We work very well together, but there is certainly room for improvement.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being with us today. Regarding the specific allegations report in the Globe and Mail from CSIS documents that Beijing was responsible for illegal cash donations, tax receipts, and hiring campaign workers using illegal methods, as well as disinformation campaigns in the 2021 election. This information from CSIS would have been shared with our Five Eyes intelligence allies. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, as I mentioned earlier, I would not be in a position to comment specifically on these allegations, this information. What I can say, however, is that indeed CSIS and our intelligence partners do share information extensively with international partners. This foreign interference, amongst other threats, is one that is shared by many countries. The PRC specifically and other countries are engaging in foreign interference in other countries. And one of the advantage we have is having a number of countries in not only amongst the Five Eyes, but more broadly in Western Europe, in Asia, in the Middle East. We work very closely with these partners to share information. And that is one way we have to protect Canadians, is to benefit from the enriched picture here.
It was also, it was also reported that a Consul General of Beijing took credit for the defeat of a Conservative MP in the 2021 election. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, I would unfortunately have to reiterate my answer. I cannot specifically confirm some of the information that is in the public domain in this current setting.
This has been asked, but I'll ask again. Was the Prime Minister briefed of any of this information, and when would that have been? What would have been the dates?
Madam Chair, we will be, as I in answer to the previous question, we endeavored to be able to provide information to working with PCO to this committee in terms of what has been briefed and who has been briefed, but I'm not in a position to specifically answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Vigneault, and I appreciate your service to this country, but I am surprised. Of course, you were all aware that you were coming to this committee today, and I know you all take, I'm sure, very detailed notes in your calendar. So I'm a bit surprised that that information is not readily available to committee members, as I'm sure you anticipated the questions of when the Prime Minister would or would not have been briefed by you or others in CSIS, but I would appreciate if you would provide that in short order to the committee. Thank you. To the RCMP, has CSIS shared any of this information regarding election interference with you?
Any sharing of information would have been done through the site committee, and then if it falls into the criminal space, the RCMP would investigate.
And you're not investigating?
We're not investigating any elements from the 2019 or the 2021 elections. We did not receive any actionable intelligence that would warrant us to initiate a criminal investigation.
So no charges have been laid to anyone concerning any election interference, is that correct?
No charges have been laid.
And no charges have been laid concerning the Beijing police stations illegally operating in Canada for the purpose of terrorizing Chinese Canadians. No charges have been laid in that regard either?
No, but the RCMP has taken overt action on 4 specific sites where we were present in uniform marked vehicles to demonstrate to the community that we're taking this seriously, and we've had a positive impact on the actions that we've taken.
And that positive impact in particular, does that mean that the operations from those illegal Beijing police stations have ceased?
Our understanding is that they've ceased, and we're continuing our investigation of the ongoing. Anytime you have a representative from the embassy who's a law enforcement liaison officer comes up to us and not pleased with the actions we took, I think that's a sign that we did our job.
I appreciate your work very much in that regard. Yesterday, I believe it was shared in committee from the Deputy of Minister of Public Safety that legislative changes would need to be made, or he implied that they would need to be made for charges to be laid. Is that correct? That legislative changes would need to be made for the RCMP to lay charges. Is that correct?
When we talk about legislative changes, the RCMP operates in the criminal environment, and this is the work that Michelle alluded to earlier, my colleague, with regards to the work we do with the service. The service is in the intel business, but as the intel starts building towards a criminal offense, that's when it's shifted to the RCMP. So we work with the existing legislation that we have under the criminal code.
Thank you. Would a change to the criminal code be needed to lay charges based on the evidence that you have concerning the police stations or election interference?
We always entertain new tools under the code.
Has the Minister of Public Safety or anybody from government, the Prime Minister's office, been briefed that legislative changes would need to be made for charges to be laid?
Not to my knowledge.
None of those briefings have happened?
I'm saying not to my knowledge.
Okay, so the RCMP has not informed the Prime Minister or any of his cabinet that legislative changes are needed for charges to be laid?
The RCMP will go through public safety for any change in legislation.
Will you be pursuing any of those briefs? Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for your feedback.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Vigneault, I have a question for you. I'm a little bit of a novice when it comes to security levels and things. I asked the same question of Ms. Thomas. When information is provided to somebody in a political party that is classified, can that person provide information to others? That, Madam Chair, is one thing that we need to keep learning about and drawing lessons about, because that is one of the examples. The process isn't as clear as that. There are ways for people who have classified information to be able to share it in order to provide advice to people, just like we've got certain committees, but the actual information is classified. Is that correct? Yes, the specific information is classified. So if a person shares that information, that is illegal, so to speak, if it is classified. Yes, specific information would probably be considered illegally shared. But in my experience, this is an information that needs to be held to see how the information can be used. Yes, I understand. There's a distinction between the specific information and advice. So if CSIS is investigating a specific candidate, then that information can't be shared. I understand the need for the committee members to have specific answers to their questions, but I do have to just take a moment to say that it is not just a matter of providing the information and then washing our hands of it, but rather to provide it along with means to use it. Yes, we understand that classified information under the current system remains classified, and it has to be classified and can't be shared. Madam Chair, very specific information can't be shared. That's correct. Mr. Vigneault, Ms. Thomas said that CSIS was informed a number of complaints regarding foreign interference in 2019-21. Can you confirm that, or rather to the RCMP? No, it's very rare that information would be sent to us. Do you have any information that any information was provided from ministers' offices and others? No. Any information that we would have would involve the site committee. Can you talk about foreign interference by Beijing in 2019-2021? Has anything come to your office? No? You haven't provided information either to the minister or cabinet? No. If somebody did so without going through the regular channels, I wouldn't know. Well, just going by memory, that's one thing. But can you go through the communications with the cabinet and all others to make sure that that is not the case? Yes, I can commit to doing that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand that you can't say whether or not the information that was provided to the Globe and Mail is accurate, but there is information that indicate that some CSIS officials may have leaked information about how information was managed with the PMO, and the Prime Minister has brushed aside the possibility that one of his candidates may have had interference work in his favor. So we've got these activities by the Communist Party of China, but I want to hear about whether there are any tensions between your organization and the Prime Minister and the PMO. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, there are various aspects to that question, so I would like to quickly say that there is an investigation underway by CSIS and our partners regarding the sources of the information, the leak. We are in a democracy. People do have the right to speak freely. And as I said earlier, in response to a question, if there are means that exist already for people to express their discontent regarding relations with the Prime Minister's office, it is clear that our work is to inform the government, and we have every means available to us to do that. And so I can say that communication is open so that CSIS can provide all of the required information. Very quickly, I have little time, but on another issue, would it be useful for CSIS to have a registry of foreign officials and actors to be able to track down interference? Yes, Madam Chair. I had the opportunity to appear before a different parliamentary committee with Minister Mendocino a few weeks ago, and I would say in response to that question that yes, CSIS has been talking about foreign influence for the last few years, foreign interference, and I think that tool would be useful. It wouldn't solve all our problems, but it would increase transparency. Thank you.